Hey everybody, this is Dr. William Clark here. Glad to be with you for another episode. Wanted to spend some time with you talking about a topic that I think is important, something that I think touches all of us and hits home for all of us. And it's this idea of how do you lead within an environment where your team is small and your resources are small. And I want to talk from this topic of systems leadership for small teams. I covered this in a recent coaching call, and I figured let me share the principles of what was discussed because I think that for all of us who are growing, building or growing businesses, building or growing nonprofit organizations, you may find yourself in a situation where you're leading in an environment where the team isn't properly resourced or the team is intentionally small. Yet there are tons of things that you have to accomplish and tons of things that you have to do, and there's nowhere to offset it or to transfer it. So, what do you do and how do you lead in that way? Well, I wanted to speak towards this and I wanted to cover six major categories here for our time together, and just going to walk through it with you. As we go through it, leave your comments below. Give us a like and subscribe so that we know that this message resonates with you and it connects with you. So let's kind of start with this topic here: leading without direct reports. This can be a really major issue for a lot of folks because they are in an environment where there are very few team members in the organization. It could be a staff of one, two, or five, right? And the truth is, in a small organization, you may have, single digit staff members. Let's just go with five, but no one has any direct reports. In fact, there's only one de facto leader, and everyone kind of funnels to that person. However, everyone else on staff may have a role that indicates leadership, right? So, manager of, supervisor of, director of, vice president of, right? And those titles, it gives the impression that this person has these responsibilities and people to help them do it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there are other people within the organization who are there specifically assigned to that other sub leader to do a thing. So, how do you lead in that environment? Well, let's start with this idea first off that we have to define what leadership is. Leadership has nothing to do with other people, although this definition is going to include some of that. But it's really about the mindset that you approach leadership with. And so here's the definition that I go with based upon the work of Peter Nordhaus. And he says leadership is about influence. At the end of the day, it's about how do you influence others to accomplish a goal. It's not contingent upon influencing people who directly report to you. It's not contingent upon controlling a group of people to do a thing. It's about influencing resources, people, systems, networks to move in a particular direction to accomplish something that obviously matters to you. So we have to think about influence. And at the end of the day, influence is not about having authority. It's not about control. It's not about how you dictate where resources go and how they function. It's how do I influence everything within my wheelhouse, within my sphere to accomplish something. So true leadership, with that definition for Peter Norhaus, is about your ability to coordinate a bunch of resources that are within your control to make things happen. Well, there are things that I believe as leaders, particularly within small organizations, that you can coordinate and have direct impact over. You can coordinate how strategic thought is introduced within the organization or the project. You can coordinate how folks show up and how they can engage in a process that requires their support, that requires their resources, but it does not mean you can require it by way of your position. So we have to think about these things, the coordination of the things that are within our control, right? And coordinating how these things show up, how these things materialize. We have to be engaged, right, with others who are outside of the ecosystem of the organization, but may have some direct impact on what we do. So, for example, if you're working for a nonprofit organization, and let's say you have a staff of five, and there's only one leader, so the remaining four people have no direct reports. Who are you influencing, and who and what are you coordinating? Well, number one, you want to spend your time coordinating strategic thought, right? Investigating, thinking about, processing the different strategies you can put into place to accomplish your goal. So these are internal strategies we're talking about. These are ideas that only you can execute on. These are ideas that maybe you need others to support, but there's no other support mechanism. So this leads to the other side of coordination, and that is, where are the other resources? Where do they exist? How do I get tapped into those resources to bring those resources to light and bring them to a place where they can contribute? Part of how you I put mobilize rather those resources is identifying connecting points between their interest and yours. So when you talk about influence, you're talking about how do we move the needle for someone who doesn't have to do it, moving the needle for someone who has to make a choice on their own of whether or not they will help you or they're not going to help you. One effective strategy is identifying what matters to them, what gets them excited, what gets them motivated, what gets them moving out of the bed, what gets them focused to do their work. And does their interest, does their focus, does their purpose align with something that you are looking to accomplish as well? That alignment together can be a powerful connecting point in building a relationship with an outside entity that may not have any interest or have not thought about working with you. But now, because there's a connection, you can engage external individuals, external systems to help you accomplish what you're trying to do. Separate, but aligned with this idea, is identifying places and spaces where you can co lead with someone who is trying to do something similar to you, right? So this is different than finding a partnership with another entity or person to accomplish a thing. There's the philosophy and viewpoint that there are other entities doing similar work and trying to accomplish similar goals, but instead of them leading by themselves, they may want to take on a co-lead, right? Someone who is throwing in investment resources, dollars, ideas, responsibilities, and they're sharing the responsibility to lead and influence the entire network together, but in separate areas, right? This can be a powerful add on to your ability to lead, even when you don't have direct reports, because now you have a partner in crime. Now you have a partner who can help you think through things. You have a thought partner who can you can bounce things off of, which is one of the deficiencies in not having a direct report or teams that are focused on doing what you're doing. You have someone who's looking down the road, over the horizon, over the next 3 to 5, 10 years, strategizing themselves. So this is less about co-control of a system or a network. This is all about improving your ability to have someone to go on this journey with, who thinks like you from the perspective of what you're trying to accomplish. They're not looking to become subservient or overly aligned so that you are sharing the outcomes and splitting the differences between your group and their group. Rather, they are looking to share the responsibilities of leading a group, and whatever outcomes come from it, you take what you need and then leave the rest. That can be very, very powerful if you are trying to figure out your leadership footing and you're not finding it. This can be powerful for small business owners as well. Whereas, let's go through these two mechanisms again. There's the alignment piece where you find alignment with somebody and you identify what they're trying to accomplish and you match over that and you say, hey, can you do this thing for me because you're already doing it for yourself, and can I benefit from that? That's Think about this as a subcontracting relationship, right? You have a general contractor who's overseeing the overall project, likely through in a large investment. This general contractor is aware of what needs to be accomplished for the project, but he or she is not a brick maker or bricklayer. And so they identify this other company, this other entity who is really, really good at bricklaying. And they say, hey, can we use your skills to work on this project. We don't have bricklayers in our portfolio. We're not looking to become skilled in it. We're not looking to hire and retain permanent staff, but we do have a project that is active, that is live, and that needs a bricklayer. The bricklayer company says, yes, we could do that. And you come to terms, exchange fees, set a schedule, and you guys begin to work together. That's the alignment. That's the subcontracting a relationship you may identify with. For nonprofits, think about this. This may not be a paid situation, but let's talk about paid for a second. You may do this same strategy, this same bricklaying strategy with interns or with AmeriCorps Vistas. You may do this with volunteers if you can manage them well. You may do this with other smaller startup nonprofits who have a vested interest in the subject area that you are focused on. And you may provide a small stipend to their organization or to a key staff member to perform a service. So you're not taking on the full responsibility of a staff person, but you are getting some benefit of having this person perform a service for you, right? So that's that alignment piece we're talking about, and we'll call that subcontracting. Co-leading for small businesses could be a concept where we are partners at a higher level. So let's go back to the general contractor concept. We have a project that's coming online, and we're going to build this house. I'm a GC, and you're a GC. I may offer you 20, 30, 40, 50% of this project where we can be co-GCs because we both know the work. We have similar goals, similar tastes, similar relationships. However, since I found the project, I'm inviting you to join me on the project. And I know that I could use a partner, a thought partner to strategize to navigate through this particular project. I may be overextended financially. I may be overextended time wise. I may be overextended in my interest in this particular neighborhood, but I know this project is a good one. So instead of taking on the full responsibility for whatever reason, I invited the GC to join in and to be part of this journey with me. And that person who is equally competent in this area agrees, right? And so because we agree, we now set terms, and let's call it a 60-40 split, right? Whereas I have 60, you have 40, and we divide up the responsibilities. There's no rhyme or reason behind why we are dividing responsibilities. There's no rhyme or reason behind why I have this part of the project and you have this part of the project, because we're just as good. And in fact, I've known of your work for quite some time. I've seen your work. I trust you. You trust me. We just divide it by whatever mechanism that we have. And so therefore we're co-leading, and we check in with each other on a regular basis, and we make sure we're hitting all our milestones. If one of us run into trouble, we call the other and we navigate through it together. It's more of a partnership. Similarly, in the nonprofit world, where there's a project to be accomplished, and you may invite someone to join in on this project via a grant application. Instead of taking a 100% of the dollars, you may say to nonprofit B, hey, I'm nonprofit A. Would you mind sharing 40% of the workload? Could you bring 40% of the resources, 40% of the staff, 40% of your thoughts, 40% of your strategy? I take the 60%. And if we get funded, we'll split it that way, and we will accomplish this particular body of work together. When you're leading in a small environment, what you're trying to accomplish is expanding your capacity outward because it doesn't exist inward. All right. You, as the lone resource or as the main resource, as the leader, there is something that you have to acknowledge about what you do well and where your gaps may be, whether it's a temporary gap or a long-term gap, in order for you to take advantage of a subcontracting relationship or take advantage of a partnership or strategic partnership. This leads me to like the closing thought for this section around leadership without direct reports. And it is this: you have to embrace self-leadership as a core responsibility of yourself. If leadership is about influence, then self leadership, let me just back up for a second. If leadership is about influence of others, to accomplish a goal, then self leadership is about influencing yourself to accomplish a goal. Whether you have a big team or a small team, you're going to have to master self leadership. You do this in three key areas. This is the work of Dr. Christopher Neck and Christopher Manns. You do this in three key areas cognitively, so cognitive strategies. You're thinking through your processing in your mind strategies, then behavioral strategies. You begin to execute on those strategies you think about. And as you begin to execute behaviorally, the third is finding enjoyment and joy and happiness on the journey. It's hard, it's difficult, it's challenging, but you can do this. And that's the whole point of this journey. So as you're leading without direct reports, start with leading yourself and then start to think about how you can partner with others in a equity partnership relationship or a subcontracting relationship to expand capacity, and think about your role as an influencer, not someone who's telling people what to do and wagging the finger, but bringing others along, braiding together resources to accomplish something that's significant, that's important, and that is essential for the success of the projects that you are working on.